The Galactic Council chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of polished obsidian, its crystalline walls humming with the translated voices of 14,000 species. Ambassador of the collective adjusted her breathing apparatus and reviewed the data streaming across her neural implant for the 100th time that cycle. The readings made no sense. Humanity had been the most polite species ever encountered in the galaxy's recorded history. For 2 centuries since first contact, they had apologized for breathing too loudly during diplomatic sessions, thanked other species for the privilege of existing in the same star system, and once spent 6 months negotiating a trade agreement where they accidentally gave away 3 entire solar systems because they were too embarrassed to say no to a clearly unfair deal. The Empire had built their entire economic model around human politeness. The crystalline beings would propose increasingly ridiculous trade terms just to watch humans squirm uncomfortably and agree anyway. It had become a form of entertainment across the galaxy. Betting pools formed around how many times humans would say sorry during standard diplomatic functions. The current record stood at 4,732 apologies in a single session, achieved when human ambassador accidentally stepped on a STO equivalent. But today, something was different. Sensory tendrils twitched as she observed the human delegation preparing for what should have been a routine resource allocation meeting. Ambassador Sarah Martinez sat straight-backed in her chair, her hands folded calmly in her lap. No fidgeting, no nervous glances, no preemptive apologies for taking up space. "Perhaps they are ill," suggested Ambassador of the Aquatic Confederation, his water suit gurgling softly as he spoke. "Human politeness might be a biological function if they are experiencing some sort of medical emergency." His research had been thorough. Human politeness was indeed partially biological, rooted in complex social evolution that had helped their species survive on their hostel. But it was also cultural, learned, reinforced by centuries of conditioning that made them instinctively defer to others, especially in situations where they felt outmatched or overwhelmed. The Council had counted on this. When the hegemony had proposed the new resource extraction protocols 6 months ago, it was understood by everyone present that humans would object briefly, apologize for objecting, then agree to give up mining rights to 17 systems in exchange for the privilege of continued cooperation. The protocols were specifically designed to strip Earth and its colonies of valuable resources while giving humans just enough scraps to survive. It was, by galactic standards, a perfectly reasonable arrangement. Humans were new to the galactic community, militarily weak, and technologically inferior. The natural order demanded they know their place. Their excessive politeness made this transition smooth and painless for everyone involved. Ambassador Martinez stood as her name was called and felt a flutter of anticipation. How would the humans phrase their surrender this time? Would Ambassador Martinez begin with the traditional human opening of, "We're terribly sorry to take up the Council's valuable time," or perhaps the more elaborate, "We hope we're not being too presumptuous in believing our humble opinion might be worth considering"? "Honorable members of the Galactic Council," Martinez began, her voice carrying clearly across the vast chamber. No tremor, no hesitation. Humanity rejects the resource extraction protocols in their entirety. The chamber fell silent. Its breathing apparatus wheezed in surprise. Around the circular assembly, thousands of aliens turned their attention to the human delegation, certain they had misheard the translation. "I'm sorry," said Ambassador, and his reptilian features twisting in confusion. "Did you just refuse, without apologizing, without explaining how grateful you are for our consideration?" Martinez smiled, but it wasn't the nervous, self-deprecating smile humans typically wore during diplomatic functions. This smile was sharp, confident, and utterly alien to anyone who had dealt with humans before. "That's correct," she replied. "We refuse. Furthermore, we're withdrawing from the Tau trade agreements, canceling the mining concessions, and demanding renegotiation of the Terra Protection Accords. All previous agreements made by human representatives are hereby considered null and void." The translation systems struggled to keep up with the explosion of shocked voices that erupted across the chamber. Tendrils went rigid as she processed what she was hearing. Humans didn't make demands. Humans asked politely. Humans apologized for having opinions. "You cannot simply withdraw from legally binding agreements," and hissed, his scaled hands clenching into fists. The Tau Accords alone represent 300 billion standard credits in infrastructure investment by the hegemony. Infrastructure you built to extract resources from systems we foolishly signed over, Martinez replied without blinking. Consider it payment for 2 centuries of education in galactic politics. Elder of the Ancient Ones, a being so old his species had forgotten their own planet of origin, leaned forward on his walking crystal. His voice, when it came, sounded like grinding stone. Young species, you forget yourself. The politeness of your kind is legendary. It is what makes you tolerable in civilized company. Without it, you are simply another aggressive mammalian species with delusions of importance. The insult hung in the air like a physical thing. Every being in the chamber knew that calling someone an aggressive mammalian species was one of the worst slurs in galactic politics. It implied primitive behavior, irrational violence, and fundamental unfitness for civilized society. Ambassador Martinez stood slowly, her movements deliberate and controlled. When she spoke, her voice carried across the chamber with a clarity that made even the Ancient Ones pause. Elder, with all due respect, which at this point is considerably less than it was 5 minutes ago, you seem to be operating under a fundamental misunderstanding about human nature. She gestured to her delegation, 5 other humans who sat with the same unnaturally calm posture. You've spent 2 centuries dealing with our diplomats, our politicians, our carefully selected representatives who were chosen specifically because they could navigate your Byzantine political systems without causing offense. You think you know humanity because you've met the people we send to say please and thank you. Martinez paused, letting her words settle over the chamber like a physical weight. But you've never met the humans who build our starships. You've never negotiated with the humans who fought the war of Martian independence. You've certainly never sat across from the humans who survived the resource wars, the climate catastrophe, or the 3 separate extinction events that should have wiped us out but didn't. The chamber's ambient noise faded as thousands of alien minds struggled to process this new information, felt her sensory organs contracting in what her species recognized as fear. The humans had fought wars, survived extinction events. The files said nothing about this. Our politeness, Martinez continued, her voice growing harder with each word, is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of civilization. It's proof that a species that clawed its way up from a death world learned to be kind anyway. But kindness, honored members of the council, should not be mistaken for stupidity. She pulled out a small device that didn't recognize and placed it on the podium. 3 months ago, our scientists completed construction of the first human dreadnought. It's currently orbiting just outside this system's heliopause, along with 47 of its sister ships. They're not here to threaten anyone, merely to observe today's proceedings. The device projected a holographic display that made several council members recoil in shock. The ship was massive, bristling with weapons that looked disturbingly efficient, and appeared to be built from materials that registered as unknown to most scanning systems. 48 dreadnoughts, Martinez said conversationally, each one crewed by the humans you've never met, the engineers who can build a fusion reactor from spare parts and good intentions, the soldiers who treat impossible odds as a mild inconvenience, the settlers who looked at a planet where it rained sulfuric acid and said, "We can work with this." She smiled again, and this time there was something predatory in the expression that made breathing apparatus stutter. Now I believe we were discussing renegotiation of our agreements. I do hope everyone will be reasonable. The silence that followed was deafening. Around the chamber, thousands of alien minds frantically recalculated everything they thought they knew about humanity. In the space of 5 minutes, the most polite species in galactic history had revealed teeth that no one knew they possessed. Ambassador and Scaled Hide had gone pale, a sign of extreme stress in his species. This is unprecedented. Human behavior has been consistent for 2 centuries. Our social models, our economic projections, our entire understanding of your species. Based on incomplete data, Martinez finished. You met our diplomats and assumed you'd met humanity. That's like judging a star by studying a single photon. Elder's walking crystal rang like a bell as he struck it against the floor. Young species, you dare threaten the council with your primitive war machines. Martinez turned to face the Ancient One directly. Elder, I haven't threatened anyone. I've simply corrected a misunderstanding about human capabilities. The fact that you interpret this information as a threat says more about your own intentions than mine. The truth of this statement rippled through the chamber like a physical wave. The resource extraction protocols had indeed been designed to exploit human politeness. The trade agreements had been deliberately one-sided. The entire galactic community had spent 2 centuries systematically taking advantage of what they perceived as human weakness. And now they were discovering that humanity had been keeping detailed records of every slight, every unfair deal, every moment when their courtesy had been mistaken for stupidity. Research files suddenly made terrible sense. Human politeness hadn't just been cultural conditioning. It had been a strategy, a way of gathering intelligence while their real capabilities developed in secret. Every apology had been a sensor reading. Every self-deprecating comment had been a probe for weaknesses. The predator species of the galaxy had been studying the prey, never realizing that the prey had been studying them right back. Ambassador Martinez gathered her materials with the same calm efficiency she'd shown throughout the session. The human delegation will remain available for serious negotiations regarding mutual cooperation between equals. We look forward to more productive discussions in the future. As the human delegation filed out of the chamber, realized that the galaxy had just witnessed something unprecedented. For the first time in recorded history, a species had successfully graduated from being prey to being predator while everyone was watching. The most terrifying part wasn't the ships or the threats or the sudden revelation of hidden strength. It was the fact that humans had spent 2 centuries being polite while being systematically abused and had never once stopped smiling. What kind of species learned to be that patient? What kind of minds could endure centuries of condescension while planning their eventual response? As the chamber erupted in panicked discussions and emergency consultations, one thought echoed through's mind with crystalline clarity. The galaxy had been making a very dangerous assumption about what human patience actually meant. They were about to learn the difference between politeness and weakness, and the lesson was going to be expensive. 3 days after Ambassador Martinez had shattered 2 centuries of galactic assumptions, the emergency session of the Inner Council convened in the highest security chamber of the station. Only the 12 most powerful species were represented, their delegates gathering in a room that had been swept for surveillance devices 17 times. Found herself promoted from observer to active participant, her expertise in human behavior suddenly invaluable. She settled into the crystalline chair designed for her physiology and tried to ignore the fact that every other being in the room was looking at her like she might have answers to questions that had kept them awake for 3 straight cycles. "Report," demanded N, his reptilian features still showing the pale stress coloration that had appeared during the human announcement. The representative had aged visibly since learning that their economic empire was built on exploiting beings who apparently owned a fleet of unknown warships. Tendrils twitched as she activated her data display. "The situation is worse than we initially calculated. My team has been analyzing human colonies for the past 72 hours, and we've discovered evidence of systematic concealment across their entire civilization." The holographic projector showed a 3-dimensional map of human space, with colonies marked in different colors. Most of the Inner Council members had seen similar displays before, but highlighted details that had previously been overlooked. Standard intelligence suggested humans had established 47 colonies across 16 systems, agricultural worlds, mining outposts, research stations. The population estimates put total human numbers at approximately 8 billion beings across all settlements. She paused, watching the faces of the council members chain, as she overlaid new data onto the display. Revised intelligence indicates a minimum of 237 human colonies across 81 systems. The population estimates now range between 45 and 60 billion humans, with at least 12 worlds showing clear signs of heavy industrial development that was somehow hidden from our surveying teams. Elder's walking crystal rang against the floor with a sound like breaking glass. "Impossible! Our monitoring systems would have detected industrial development on that scale. The energy signatures alone would be easily detected if they were using conventional technology," agreed. "Human industrial development appears to be based on principles that our sensors weren't designed to recognize. They've been using geothermal, solar, and what appears to be controlled fusion technology that operates at frequencies our equipment considers natural background radiation." Senator of the Hive Collective, her features clicking in agitation, leaned forward on her specialized platform. You're suggesting they deliberately developed technology specifically to avoid detection by galactic standard sensors. I'm not suggesting it, replied grimly. I'm stating it as confirmed fact. Furthermore, analysis of human diplomatic communications shows consistent patterns of misdirection. Every time they provided colony census data, population figures were understated by a factor of at least 10. Every time they reported industrial capacity, the numbers were deliberately minimized. The chamber fell silent as the implications settled over the assembled delegates. The humans hadn't just been polite. They had been lying with systematic precision for 2 centuries. Admiral Oss of the Void Fleet, a crystalline being whose species had evolved in the vacuum of space, spoke with a voice like singing metal. What about their military capabilities? The ship's ambassador Martinez referenced. Its display shifted to show fuzzy images captured by long-range surveillance drones that had been hastily dispatched after the human announcement. We've confirmed the presence of at least 48 large vessels in the outer system, but our scans are being actively jammed by technology we can't identify. She highlighted one of the clearer images, showing a massive ship that seemed to bend light around its edges. What we can determine is that these vessels are significantly larger than anything in the current galactic fleet registry. The smallest appears to be roughly equivalent to our largest dreadnoughts. The largest. She paused, double-checking her calculations. The largest appears to be nearly 3 times the size of the Council's flagship. And scales rippled in patterns that indicated severe distress. 3 times the size? That's impossible. The resource requirements alone would bankrupt a dozen systems. Not if you have access to asteroid mining operations that you've been concealing for a century and a half, replied. Our revised estimates suggest that human industrial capacity may actually exceed that of the hegemony, possibly by a significant margin. The statement hit the chamber like a physical blow. The hegemony was the most industrialized civilization in known space, their manufacturing capabilities the foundation of their political power. The idea that the humans, the apologetic humans who begged permission to exist, might actually outproduce them was more than shocking. It was world-shattering. Senator's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation in her species. How? How did an entire civilization hide this level of development? Our intelligence networks span the galaxy. We have monitoring stations, trade agreements, cultural exchanges, all of which were managed by human diplomatic corps who appear to have been specifically trained in misdirection, replied. Consider this. We've been impressed by human politeness for 2 centuries. We attributed their deference to cultural weakness. But what if their diplomatic behavior was actually the result of extensive training in psychological manipulation? She pulled up a recording of Ambassador Martinez from 3 days ago, focusing on specific moments during her address. Watch her body language, her speech patterns, her timing. This isn't someone who suddenly became confident. This is someone who has always been confident but was playing a role, a very convincing role. The recording showed Martinez's transformation from polite diplomat to something far more dangerous. But when viewed with new understanding, it became clear that the change had been too smooth, too practiced. This wasn't someone discovering inner strength. This was someone dropping a carefully maintained mask. Elder struck his walking crystal against the floor with enough force to crack the ancient stone. You're suggesting that human politeness was an act, a deliberate deception spanning multiple generations. I'm suggesting that human politeness was a strategy, corrected. One that allowed them to gather intelligence, avoid conflicts they weren't ready for, and develop their capabilities without interference. And it worked perfectly. Admiral Oss's crystalline form chimed with harmonic frequencies that indicated deep thought. If this analysis is correct, then we are not dealing with a species that has suddenly become dangerous. We are dealing with a species that has been dangerous all along and is now choosing to reveal it. The distinction was important, and every member of the council understood why. A species that became dangerous might be unpredictable, might make mistakes that could be exploited. A species that had been hiding their true capabilities for centuries was something else entirely. They were patient, disciplined, and had demonstrated the ability to plan operations across multiple generations. And stress coloration had deepened to an alarming shade. What do they want? There must be demands, conditions for negotiation. activated another display showing the formal communication that had arrived 6 hours after the humans left the council chamber. Ambassador Martinez has requested a private meeting with the full inner council. No recording devices, no translators except for basic communication, no security details beyond standard protocols. She wants to meet us alone. Senator's mandibles clicked in disbelief. One human against the 12 most powerful beings in the galaxy. Apparently, confirmed. The message specifically states that she believes direct communication between decision-makers will be more productive than formal diplomatic channels. Elder's ancient eyes focused on the message display with laser intensity. This is either supreme confidence or supreme foolishness. Given what we have learned about human deception capabilities, I suspect it is the former. Admiral Oss rang like a bell as he considered the implications. If she is willing to meet us without backup, without witnesses, what does that suggest about her position? Either she believes she holds overwhelming advantages, or she has information that she believes will change our perspective entirely, finished. Something she can only share in complete privacy. The chamber fell silent again as each council member processed this information through the filter of their own species' approach to politics and warfare. The humans had just revealed that they possessed military and industrial capabilities that had been completely hidden. They had demonstrated the ability to maintain deceptions across centuries, and now they wanted to meet in private to discuss. What? And was the first to voice the question everyone was considering. What if this is all preliminary? What if the ships, the hidden colonies, the industrial capacity? What if that's not their full capability? What if Ambassador Martinez wants to meet privately because she has something even more significant to reveal? The possibility hung in the air like a toxic cloud. If humans had been this successful at hiding their true nature for 2 centuries, what else might they be concealing? What other revelations might be waiting? Senator spoke slowly, her voice carrying the careful precision her species used when discussing existential threats. There is another possibility we must consider. What if the humans are not seeking negotiation? What if they are offering us an opportunity to surrender? The word surrender struck the chamber like lightning. None of the species present had considered surrender to anyone in. They were the inner council, the apex of galactic civilization, the beings who shaped the fate of thousands of worlds. But they were also beings who had just discovered that they had been systematically deceived by a species they considered inferior. A species that had now revealed military capabilities that could potentially challenge the entire galactic order. Looked around the chamber at beings who had controlled galactic politics for longer than human civilization had existed, and realized that, for the first time in their long lives, they were experiencing something they had never felt before. They were afraid. Elder's voice, when it finally came, sounded older than usual. We will meet with Ambassador Martinez, but we will also quietly alert our respective fleets to maintain readiness positions. If humanity has been planning this moment for centuries, we must be prepared for any possibility. As the Council began making their preparations for what might be the most important meeting in galactic history, one thought echoed through the chamber with growing intensity. If humans had been this patient, this disciplined, this capable of long-term planning while maintaining perfect deception for 2 centuries, what did that suggest about their ultimate intentions? The galaxy was about to find out, and none of them were certain they were ready for the answer. The private meeting chamber was smaller than the main council hall, designed for intimate negotiations between the galaxy's most powerful beings. 12 chairs arranged in a perfect circle, each one customized for the physiology of the inner council species. In the center, a simple human chair that looked almost comically basic compared to the elaborate seating surrounding it. Ambassador Martinez entered alone, carrying nothing but a single data pad and wearing the same calm expression that had become terrifyingly familiar to the council members over the past week. She moved to the central chair without hesitation, settled herself comfortably, and looked around the circle of alien faces with what could only be described as patient amusement. "Thank you for agreeing to meet privately," she began, her voice carrying easily in the acoustically perfect chamber. "I believe this conversation will be more productive without the theater of formal diplomacy." Elder leaned forward on his walking crystal, ancient eyes studying the human with undisguised wariness. "Speak, then. What demands do you bring?" Martinez smiled, and felt her sensory tendrils contract reflexively. That smile had become the most feared expression in galactic politics. "No demands, Elder. I'm here to offer you a choice." She activated her data pad, and a holographic display materialized above the central table. The image showed a star map, but not one that any of the council members recognized. This map showed human space, but the true extent of it. "This is what human territory actually looks like," Martinez said conversationally. 412 inhabited systems, 873 major industrial complexes, 12 terraforming operations currently, and a population of approximately 93 billion humans. The numbers hit the chamber like physical blows, and stress coloration had gone so pale he was nearly transparent. Senator's mandibles clicked in rapid, panic sequences. Even Admiral Oss, whose crystalline species rarely showed emotion, was resonating at frequencies that indicated severe distress. "That's impossible," and whispered. "Our monitoring systems, our trade networks, our intelligence operations. How could we have missed expansion on this scale?" "Because you weren't supposed to find it," Martinez replied simply. "The 47 systems you know about are what we call the polite colonies. They exist specifically to interact with galactic civilization while keeping you from discovering our real settlements." She gestured to the hologram, highlighting different regions in various colors. "The red systems are heavy industrial worlds where we build our ships and infrastructure. The blue systems are research colonies where we develop new technologies. The green systems are agricultural worlds that could feed the entire galactic population 3 times over. And the yellow systems—" She paused, and her smile grew sharper. "The yellow systems are where we train our military." Found her voice with effort. "Military training? For 2 centuries, humans have claimed to be a peaceful species. Your diplomatic files specifically state that humanity has moved beyond armed conflict." "Our diplomatic files state that the human colonies in contact with galactic civilization have moved beyond internal armed conflict," Martinez corrected with the precision of someone who had spent decades crafting careful truths. "Which is accurate. The polite colonies haven't had a war in over a century." The distinction was subtle but devastating. The humans had told the truth, but only about the small fraction of their civilization that the galaxy was allowed to see. Admiral Oss's crystalline form rang with discordant harmonies. "What kind of military requires training facilities across multiple star systems?" Martinez's expression shifted, becoming more serious. "The kind that's preparing to fight a war across multiple galaxies." The chamber fell silent. Even the ambient hum of the station's life support systems seemed to pause. Senator was the first to find her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "Multiple galaxies, that's what are you preparing to fight?" "Not what," Martinez replied quietly. "Who?" She manipulated the holographic display, zooming out until the familiar spiral of their galaxy appeared, then continuing to zoom out until neighboring galaxies became visible. Red indicators began appearing in several of them, pulsing like warning lights. 3 months ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected signs of massive fleet movements in Andromeda. Military formations on a scale that would make our dreadnought fleet look like a training squadron. They're moving this way, and their projected arrival time is approximately 18 standard years. Elder's walking crystal fell silent as he processed this information. "You know of threats from outside our galaxy? How long have you been monitoring extragalactic space?" "Since our 2nd year of galactic contact," Martinez replied. "We found it interesting that a galaxy containing thousands of intelligent species, many of them apparently warlike, had achieved such stable political arrangements. So we started looking for external threats that might have encouraged cooperation." She highlighted different regions of the extragalactic map, showing movement patterns and fleet concentrations. "We found them. Multiple species, multiple threats, all apparently moving through galaxies in systematic waves, and all of them heading in this general direction." And scales had gone completely colorless. "You've known about extragalactic invasion forces for 2 centuries and said nothing." "We said nothing because we weren't ready to fight them," Martinez replied bluntly. "And neither were you. The combined military forces of the current galactic civilization would last approximately 6 weeks against what's coming. We've spent 2 centuries building the capacity to make it an actual war." The implications crashed over the council like a collapsing star. Humanity's hidden expansion, their concealed military development, their systematic deception of galactic civilization, all of it had been preparation for a threat that no one else even knew existed. Senator's voice was barely audible. What exactly is coming? Martinez manipulated the display again, showing detailed scans of the approaching fleets. The scale was incomprehensible. Individual ships that appeared larger than space stations, formations that stretched across light years, technological signatures that registered as completely unknown to galactic science. "We call them the Harvesters," she said simply. "They appear to move through galaxies systematically, stripping them of resources and eliminating any resistance. Based on our observations of their previous targets, they're very good at what they do." Elder struck his walking crystal against the floor, but the sound was weak, uncertain. "Why tell us this now? Why reveal everything?" "Because 18 years isn't very long," Martinez replied. "And because even with everything we've built, even with our hidden fleets and our secret weapons, we can't stop them alone. We need every ship, every technology, every tactical advantage that galactic civilization can provide." She stood and walked to the edge of the circle, looking directly at each council member in turn. "For 2 centuries, we've been the polite guests at your galactic community. We've apologized for existing, thanked you for allowing us to participate, and accepted whatever scraps you were willing to share. We did this because we needed time, and because conflict within the galaxy would have weakened all of us for what's coming." Her voice grew harder, more intense. "But politeness time is over. The Harvesters don't negotiate, they don't accept surrender, and they don't leave survivors. In 18 years, they're going to arrive in this galaxy, and every species, every world, every individual will face exactly one choice: fight or die." Admiral Oss resonated with frequencies that indicated deep confusion. "If this threat is as serious as you suggest, why maintain the deception? Why not reveal the danger and unite the galaxy immediately?" Martinez laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Because you wouldn't have believed us. A junior species, claiming to know about threats that the advanced civilizations of the galaxy had somehow missed. You would have dismissed it as human paranoia or primitive fear. Worse, you might have decided we were the threat and moved to neutralize us." The truth of this statement settled over the chamber like a heavy weight. The council members looked at each other, recognizing the accuracy of her assessment. If humans had revealed this information 2 centuries ago, the galactic response would indeed have been dismissal or suspicion. "Instead," Martinez continued, "we spent 2 centuries proving that humans could be trusted, that we were harmless, that we posed no threat to the established order. We let you underestimate us, exploit us, treat us as inferior. And while you were busy feeling superior to the polite little humans, we were building the fleet that might actually save your lives." She returned to her chair and sat down, her expression becoming businesslike. "So here's the choice I mentioned. Option 1, we continue the pretense for another 18 years. Humanity remains the polite junior species, you continue your current political and economic arrangements, and when the Harvesters arrive, we do our best to protect the galaxy with the resources we have." The holographic display shifted to show battle projections, and the numbers were not encouraging. Even with humanity's hidden fleets, the defending forces would be vastly. "Option 2, we drop all pretense starting now. Humanity reveals our true capabilities, the galactic community reorganizes for total war production, and we spend the next 18 years building the largest military force in galactic history. It won't be comfortable, it won't be polite, and it definitely won't maintain your current political arrangements." Senator's mandibles clicked in patterns that indicated rapid calculation. "What kind of reorganization are you suggesting?" "Complete," Martinez replied without hesitation. "Every industrial facility converted to military production, every scientific institution focused on weapons research, every political entity subordinated to a unified command structure, every individual trained for either combat or support roles." The chamber erupted in shocked protests. The transformation she was describing would fundamentally alter galactic civilization, dismantling political structures that had existed for. Anne's voice cut through the noise. "You're talking about the end of everything we've built, the destruction of our entire way of life." "I'm talking about survival," Martinez replied calmly. "The Harvesters don't care about your political systems, your cultural achievements, or your technological marvels. They care about resources, and they view every living being as either a resource to be consumed or an obstacle to be removed. Elder's ancient voice carried across the chamber with the weight of, "And if we refuse, if we choose to maintain our current arrangements and trust in humanity's hidden strength?" Martinez met his gaze directly. "Then in 18 years, you'll discover whether human politeness was our greatest strength or our greatest weakness. Because when the harvesters arrive, we'll protect this galaxy with everything we have. But everything we have might not be enough." She stood again, preparing to leave. "The choice is yours, honored council members. Maintain your comfortable illusions for 18 more years or face reality and do something about it. Either way, humanity will be ready. The question is whether the rest of the galaxy will join us." As she walked toward the chamber exit, Ambassador Martinez paused and looked back at the 12 most powerful beings in galactic civilization. "Oh, and one more thing. Our politeness wasn't a weakness. It was a gift. We gave you 2 centuries of stability, peace, and the illusion that the universe was a safe place. Consider that our contribution to galactic civilization." She smiled one final time, and the expression contained everything the Council had learned to fear about humanity in the past week. "You're welcome." The chamber door sealed behind her, leaving 12 beings who had controlled galactic politics for alone, with the realization that they had never been in control of anything at all. Outside the chamber, Ambassador Martinez walked calmly toward her transport, already composing the message she would send to the human fleet commanders waiting in hidden systems throughout the galaxy. The message was simple: politeness protocol has ended, begin phase 2. For the first time in 2 centuries, humanity was about to show the galaxy what they were really capable of. And 18 years was not very much time at all.